Hi, my name is Amedeo Beretta, and I have worked in animation and visual effects for many years now. In this tutorial, we are going to see how to animate your first shot. In this case, it's going to be a very simple X-Wings flyby with some close simulation of a flag there. So let's get started and see how a shot like this one came into being. The first thing you want to do when you are going to do a shot is you want to understand what the shot is about, and that requires some planning. I don't really touch 3D until I know more or less what happens in my scene. So the planning can be something as simple as this sketch in here, super basic sketch, something that takes you 5 seconds to do, well probably 5 minutes. Panel 1, we're going to have three X-Wings coming out, then they would fly down and steer to the camera right or to their own left depending, and as they steer to their own left there will be only 2 X-Wings remaining on screen. The third one we lost it. In the third panel, the camera, you see the camera is swinging down to the right. We see the 2 X-Wings passing by and a pole with a flag down there. And then after a break, the camera is still there and the third X-Wing passes by and the flag is now waving in the wind due to the turbulence generated by the X-Wing. So we are telling a bit of a story in here, and we know exactly what the camera movement will be. We know exactly which characters we will have on the scene. 3 X-Wings and a flag, possibly a background of some sort. So let's get started in Maya. You will find a link to the project in the video description. So I will open up Maya, and the first thing I want to do is to set the project. File, set project, and I will go find my tutorial called X-Wing Flyby. Click on select folder. There you are. First of all, call in the X-Wing, because after all they are the heroes of the shot. So I will go File, Create Reference, and I will go into Rig X-Wing 001. Rig is whatever is a rig for animation. It could be a character or an X-Wing. Click on Open, and there you go. The X-Wing is gray, but if we press 6 on our keyboard, the textures will show up. If you left mouse drag and select in this viewport on this project, you will only be able to select the X-Wing the handle of the X-Wing and not the X-Wing itself. This is a common feature of rigs, whereas you cannot select very often the geometry, you see, because we don't want you to touch the geometry. You can only select the handle. This is the handle, which is a NURBS curve, and you can translate it, you can rotate it, and you can scale should need to. Speaking of scale, we should make sure that the X-Wing is as big as it is supposed to be in real life. Now I've read around and an X-Wing seems to be 12 meters long. So let's see if this X-Wing is 12 meters long. The easiest way is to create a measure tool, so we'll go create, measure tools, distance tool. And you see the cursor became a crosshair. You can hold down X, that enables snap to grid. If I click up here in the viewport, you see these magnets at the top center of the viewport. If you hold down X, you see that the grid marker is highlighted. That means we are snappy to the grid. And I click once in here with the left mouse button and once in here with the left mouse button, and you see that gives us a measure 21. What I will do is I will probably reduce this, move the locator so that I get about 12 meters. But now I'm asking myself, this 12, is it really meters or not? You will find out that by default Maya set units to centimeters. If I go Windows, Settings, Preferences, you will find out under Settings that the linear working unit is centimeter indeed. So now I have to consider this is centimeters, and that is not good for us. So I will move the locators much further apart. In fact, one thing I could do is I could grab the second locator and I could move it 1200 centimeters. That should be 12 meters. And now you see how small the X-Wing was compared to how it should have been. So we'll go down there, grab the handle, hit R, using the central gizmo, left mouse drag, until the X-Wing, I will also translate it, until the X-Wing becomes 12 meters long, more or less. We don't need to be too fuzzy about that. It was about 100 times smaller than it was supposed to be. 100 there, so that it's easier. And I will set the translate Z to 0. There you go. Now I don't need the measurement tool anymore, so I will just select the 2 locators and distance dimension and hit delete on my keyboard. If you don't see this box here called the outliner, which contains the list of all the objects in the scene, you have to press this button on the toolbox here at the bottom, and that toggles its visibility. So that's one X-Wing. I checked my planning and it seems like we need 3 of them, and I know that 2 of them will be information. So what I will do is I will need another X-Wing, and I will go File, Create Reference, and grab X-Wing 001. Another X-Wing came into the scene, but where is it? It's very easy to find it. We just moved to the side the big X-Wing, and remember the X-Wing was really small, so now we have a baby X-Wing there. We just need to select this handle, and in the scale I can input 100 and press enter, and now I have another X-Wing, you see, as big as the previous one. So planning was 2 X-Wings flying information. Now I will move them side by side. I will leave the grid more or less at the center, and I will create some sort of formation. Maybe one is the wing leader and it will be slightly forward, and the other one will be slightly backward. And I will give them a bit more room. There you go. Now I would like both of these guys to fly together in a formation. They're very good pilots, so they tend to keep their relative spacing. If you think of it, I don't need to animate both of them individually really. I could animate something that moves, and as it moves it drags the 2 guys along. Let's see how that's done. I could go create locator, and down here in the center we have a little mark across. This is called a locator. If it's too small, which it probably is right now, you can go into its shape attribute in here and you will find the local scale. Please notice I'm not touching the scale there, I'm just finding local scale, and with the middle mouse button I can drag into the viewport after selecting the 3 channels with the left mouse button. I can drag and you see that changes the value. I click and drag with the middle mouse button, there you go. Remember, I'm not touching scale, I'm just touching the local scale of the locator. There you go. Now I would like for these 2 controls to follow the locator when it moves. Right now they don't. That's called constraining. It's like gluing things in 3D space. The constraining works this way. You select the master first and what's called the slave or the object to be constrained later. So I drag select around the locator, and then I hold down shift, click on the handle of the spaceship, and I go animation toolset here in the top left side of the screen, constrain, and I go into parent. A parent constraint is a glue that constrains both rotation and translation. Click on edit, reset settings, just to make sure settings go back to Maya's default settings. All I need to do now is hit apply. It seems like nothing has changed, but if I grab the handle of the spaceship, the channels are bluish. And they are bluish because now they are glued. That's an indication that they are glued. In fact, if you move the spaceship somewhere else and then you move the locator, you see that this spaceship was snapped back to the position it had when it was constrained. If I now move the locator, you see it just follows whatever the locator does. We want to do the same with the other X-Wing, so master first, slave next, and constrain, parent. Now when I drag the locator around, you see that the 2 handles of the X-Wings are pink. That means they are constrained, or there is some sort of relationship going on in there. And now if I grab the locator, both X-Wings are flying. So now I can actually make them fly in a formation if you think of it. We have sorted out the formation of the spaceships, if you think of it. Now we have to sort out the camera, in my opinion. We could start with the first part of the action, but if you think of it, we have no reference points of where the X-Wings should be in space and at which speed they go. So it feels to me that we might end up having a perfectly valid camera movement for the beginning of the action, and then find out that we cannot reach the end where the pole is, where the pole and the flag are. So I think it's a much better approach to start from a camera that is framing something objective and static, like the flag for instance, and then reverse engineer the beginning. We know for sure we are going to end up on this framing, but we don't know where we start. So maybe if we know where we end and we set it up properly, we can reverse engineer the beginning. So let's go back to Maya. And in Maya, there's a little bit of a problem that we have to sort out before we start. You see, if I zoom out, the characters are disappearing, the X-Wings are disappearing, and also I get a lot of nasty artifacts on the wings. This is a clipping plane problem. Select the perspective camera in the outliner, hit Ctrl A like alpha on the keyboard, and set the near clip plane to 1, and you see the artifacts are gone. And the far clip plane, I will add a couple of zeros to it, and you will see that now the camera renders much farther out. Now we need the pole, so we'll go File, Import, and I will click on Flag in here under the props folder, and I will click on Open, and I have a flag in there. There you go. This flag is about 2 meters long there. If you think of it, the spaceship is about 12 meters, so it sort of makes sense. We can move up the spaceships using the locator, and now we know for sure the flag is there, and we can position the X-wings, and we can also create a camera. So let's start from the camera. I will go Create, Cameras, Camera, spacebar to minimize the window and see the other views, and in any other view I will go Panels, Perspective, Camera 1, and that's going to show me the camera. You see that the camera is framing somewhere else. I can scale it up so that you see it a bit better. You see that the camera is facing the wrong direction here, so I will just rotate it, and you see now I'm framing the pole, and now I move it up, and maybe I rotate it up. After all, the planning was fairly clear about that. If you think of it, we are framing the pole and the flag from underneath. So we'll just move the camera a bit closer to the flag. But how do I know what's being framed in camera? You see that it's very difficult to understand. One thing I can do is I can click on this button, the greenish circle surrounded by the white square. This is called the resolution gate, and it shows me what my actually renders out once we render. So this means it's much easier for me to frame stuff now. So there you go. I feel this might be the framing I want to have, which seems to be in line with the planning again. You see how I keep on checking on the planning in here. Actually, my framing in the planning was very rushed. I think I wanted the pole to be a bit more on the third of the composition and a bit bigger on screen, much like I have in here now. So there you go. That sorted out the first problem, and now I can go grab the locator and move these spaceships where I want them to fly by. Probably will hide the flag right now, I don't need it, and say I want the spaceship to be not that big because I would like the flag to wave in the wind when the second spaceship comes by. So these guys may cause some turbulence, but the real waving on the flag is at the end when the last pilot, the badass, comes in frame. So I don't need to see the flag right now. I just need to know more or less that it's going to fill up the frame, you see, but I don't need anything else. I need to know where these guys are and how big I want them on screen, and I can do that by moving the locator. And I guess they will fly down more or less this way. So now I know where the X-wings should pass by, I know where the camera is at the end, and I know where the flag is. If you don't want to edit the camera anymore, and it's very easy at this stage to mess up the camera if you don't pay attention, you just click on this button here, the camera with the padlock, and now it doesn't matter what you do, you see, you can't even zoom in and out in the camera, it's all locked, which is very good practice when you work with camera. Keep in mind that in the vast majority of the movies I worked on, the animator couldn't even touch cameras, okay, because it's very easy to mess them up.